Renata Voss stood at the edge of her overgrown hedges on a humid July afternoon, hands on her hips, studying 3 years of neglected growth with the specific disapproval of a woman who noticed everything. "Ma'am," I said, setting down my hedge trimmer, "I think I got most of it." She turned, one eyebrow raised. "Ma'am? Nathan, I've known you 8 years. Stop calling me ma'am. I'm not that old to you." Laughter came easily, though something in her tone carried more weight than the joke suggested. "Stay with me," because that afternoon revealed something neither of us had said out loud in 3 years. "My name is Nathan, and I dated Sarah Voss for 4 years before we ended things 18 months ago, a breakup so mutual and civil that neither of us cried at the final conversation, just acknowledged that we'd become better friends than partners somewhere along the way. Sarah moved to Denver for a promotion 6 months after we split, leaving behind a city where her mother Renata still lived in the same craftsman bungalow she'd owned for over 2 decades. Meeting Renata during my first month dating Sarah, back when I was 26 and terrified of making a bad impression on the woman who'd interrogated every previous boyfriend with the thoroughness of a background check, had been one of the better surprises of that relationship. She'd handed me a beer within 5 minutes of meeting me, studied my reaction to her admittedly mediocre lasagna, and declared me acceptable once I told her honestly that the noodles were slightly overcooked. "Finally," she'd said. "Someone who doesn't lie to make me feel better." Over the following 4 years, Renata became something more significant than simply my girlfriend's mother. She remembered my birthday every year, mailed cards with visibly funny observations scrawled inside, invited me to summer barbecues even during stretches when Sarah was too busy with work to attend herself. When Sarah and I ended things, I assumed my connection to Renata would fade the way most such relationships do after a breakup. Polite distance, occasional holiday nods through mutual friends. Not exactly what happened. Renata texted me occasionally over those 18 months. Small things at first. Questions about restaurant recommendations, complaints about her ancient computer, and each small exchange slowly rebuilt something I hadn't realized I was maintaining. The hedge trimming request came on a Tuesday morning in July, Renata calling directly rather than texting, her voice carrying an apologetic quality I wasn't accustomed to hearing from her. "I have a strange favor to ask," she said. "My hedges have gotten completely out of control, and the landscaping company I usually hire quoted me something absurd. I remembered you mentioned once that you actually enjoy yard work. I can definitely help," I said. "When were you thinking?" "This weekend, if you're free." I know it's an unusual ask, given everything. "Renata, you don't have to sell me on it. What time should I come by?" She exhaled audibly. 9 o'clock Saturday? And Nathan, thank you. Truly. Arriving that Saturday morning, I found her hedges genuinely overwhelming. 3 years of growth creating a jungle-like barrier along her front walkway that had clearly defeated her own attempts at maintenance entirely. Renata met me at the door in gardening gloves and an old sun hat, her gray-streaked hair pulled back loosely, looking exactly as I remembered from countless family gatherings during my years dating Sarah. "You didn't have to dress for manual labor," I said, noting her genuine gardening outfit. She laughed in a way that immediately reminded me why I'd always enjoyed her company independent of my relationship with her daughter. "I intend to supervise closely," Renata said, gesturing toward the hedges. "Possibly hand you lemonade at strategic intervals. Sounds like a fair division of labor." 3 hours disappeared working through the overgrown hedges while Renata moved between her garden beds nearby, occasionally offering commentary on my progress or bringing out cold drinks without being asked. "You've gotten better at this since I last saw you attempt yard work," she observed, watching me level one stubborn section. "Living alone will do that," I said. "Turns out maintaining a house requires actual effort nobody warned me about." "Marriage prepares you for that eventuality," she said. "Or in your case, apparently a breakup did the preparing instead." Something in her tone suggested genuine curiosity rather than casual conversation. "How are you doing, really?" she asked. Since Sarah moved to Denver, not the polite answer, the actual one, continuing to trim while I considered it. "Better than I expected, honestly. We ended things for good reasons. I miss the friendship more than the relationship itself, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," Renata said. "I've watched enough failed marriages, including my own, to recognize the difference between mourning a person and mourning an idea of a future that stopped fitting reality. Her own marriage caught my attention immediately, since Renata rarely discussed Sarah's father, who'd passed away nearly a decade earlier after years of a marriage everyone in the family described only vaguely as complicated. "Can I ask about that?" I said carefully. "Your marriage, I mean." Sarah's mentioned it was difficult but never specifics. Setting down her gardening trowel, Renata considered the question. "Richard and I married too young for reasons that felt urgent at 23 but stopped making sense by 35. We stayed together for Sarah's sake longer than we probably should have, which taught her some tangled lessons about what marriage was supposed to look like." "That sounds difficult to untangle as a kid." "It was," Renata agreed. "Since his death, I've been trying to build something that felt genuinely mine, not just surviving inside someone else's expectations. That takes longer than people expect." Finishing the final hedge section, wiping sweat from my forehead in the July heat. "Ma'am," I said, gesturing at my work. "I think I got most of it." Renata turned, one eyebrow raised, studying my finished work with visible approval before her expression shifted into something more pointed. "Ma'am?" she repeated. "Nathan, stop calling me ma'am. I'm not that old to you." Assuming she meant the comment casually, I laughed. "Sorry, force of habit. What should I call you instead?" "Renata works perfectly fine," she said. "You've known me 8 years." "Ma'am makes me sound like your grandmother's bridge partner." Something in the specific intensity of her correction stayed with me longer than the moment probably warranted. "Noted," I said. "Renata it is." She smiled, though something behind the expression suggested relief rather than simple satisfaction at correcting minor etiquette. "Come inside," she said. "I'll make lunch. You've earned actual food, not just lemonade." Lunch turned into an extended afternoon conversation, Renata asking increasingly detailed questions about my life since the breakup, my job as a structural inspector, my recently adopted rescue dog who required more patience than I'd initially anticipated. "You seem lighter than I remember," she observed, partway through our meal, even accounting for the breakup. "Think I finally stopped performing a version of myself that Sarah's ambitions required," I said. Not that she asked me to change exactly, just that our different paces created pressure I hadn't fully acknowledged until we separated. "That's a remarkably self-aware observation," Renata said. 18 months of therapy to arrive at it," I admitted, laughing. She laughed too, honestly and warm, and something about the ease of our conversation struck me as different from how I remembered our previous interactions. Over the following month, Renata called twice more with small requests: help moving furniture for a room reorganization, assistance troubleshooting her stubborn garage door opener, each visit extending into longer conversations than the actual tasks required. Looking forward to these visits with an intensity that surprised me, though I attributed the feeling to simple loneliness following the breakup rather than examining it more directly. The reveal came unexpectedly, at a neighborhood barbecue Renata's longtime friend Patricia hosted in late August, an event I'd been invited to attend as Renata's guest. "Nathan," Patricia said, greeting me warmly near the drink table. "Renata's told me so much about your recent visits. The hedges look fantastic, by the way." "Thank you," I said, happy to help. Patricia lowered her voice slightly, though not quite enough for genuine privacy. "Between us, I think you've been good for her lately. She seemed happier since you started coming around more regularly." Something in Patricia's phrasing carried an implication I couldn't dismiss, one that would fully surface moments later in a way neither Patricia nor Renata had planned. "Happier how, specifically?" I asked, genuinely curious. Patricia hesitated, apparently realizing she'd said more than intended. "I probably shouldn't say anything. It's not really my place." "You've already started," I said. "Might as well finish." She glanced toward where Renata stood near the grill, then back at me. "She mentioned a few weeks ago that she'd developed some layered feelings about your visits. Nothing scandalous, just more than simple gratitude for yard work." "What exactly did she say?" "Just that she caught herself looking forward to your visits more than seemed entirely appropriate given the history," Patricia said. "She made me promise not to mention it to anyone, honestly, which apparently I've just failed at spectacularly." "I won't say it came from you," I said, though my mind was already racing through recent interactions, searching for signs I perhaps missed or misread. The remainder of the barbecue passed in distraction, watching Renata interact with other guests while processing this unexpected information, uncertain how to proceed given the layered history connecting us. Renata found me near the edge of the yard as the party began winding down. handing me a plate of dessert I hadn't requested. "You've been quiet," she observed. "Everything all right?" "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" Considering lying, deflecting towards some unrelated topic. But something about the directness Renata had always modeled in our conversations made dishonesty feel inappropriate. "Patricia mentioned something," I admitted, "about feelings you'd apparently discussed with her." Renata's face went visibly pale. "She told you that?" "She didn't mean to," I said. "It came out somewhat accidentally during conversation." Renata's expression cycled rapidly through several emotions: embarrassment, panic, and finally something that looked like resigned acceptance that the careful boundary she'd maintained had just collapsed entirely. "I'm going to need to have a conversation with Patricia about discretion," Renata said, though her tone carried more nervous energy than genuine anger. "Renata," I said carefully, "is it true?" Quiet for a long moment, studying the dessert plate in my hands rather than meeting my eyes directly. "Can we talk somewhere more private?" she asked finally. A quiet spot near Patricia's garden shed, away from the remaining party guests, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. "Need to be honest with you," Renata said, her voice steadier than I expected given her earlier visible panic. "These past few weeks, having you around more regularly, I've noticed feelings developing that go beyond simple gratitude for your help." "What kind of feelings specifically?" I asked, though some part of me already suspected the answer. "The kind that terrify me," she admitted. "Because you're my daughter's ex-boyfriend? Because the age difference exists whether we acknowledge it or not? Because this entire situation could affect my relationship with Sarah if she ever learned about it." "How long have you felt this way?" I asked. "Honestly, it started developing gradually over the past several weeks," Renata said. "Each visit I found myself looking forward to your company more than felt entirely appropriate given our history." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because acknowledging it felt dangerous," she said. "I didn't want to risk my relationship with Sarah, or the stability I've built, over feelings that might not even be reciprocated." Standing there, processing the magnitude of what she just revealed. "Renata," I said slowly, "I need to be honest too. I've noticed something shifting in how much I look forward to our visits as well. I attributed it to loneliness after the breakup, but I don't think that's the complete explanation anymore." Her eyes widened slightly. "You're serious?" "Completely serious." Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Renata let out a breath that sounded like it had been waiting several weeks to leave. "Well," she said quietly, "this is either very simple or enormously complicated, and I genuinely can't tell which yet." "Maybe both," I said. A small, real laugh escaped her at that. "Maybe both," she agreed. The garden shed's long shadows stretched further across the yard while we stood with what had just been said between us, neither of us in a hurry to break it. "This is enormously complicated," Renata finally said. "You understand that, right? Beyond the age difference, beyond how this might look to people who don't understand our specific history, there's Sarah to consider directly." "Understood completely," I said. "Building something that damages your relationship with your daughter, that's not something I want, regardless of whatever exists between us." Telling Sarah before anything else developed, that became the one thing we agreed on immediately and completely. "Before this becomes something we're hiding," Renata said. "Before it develops into something neither of us can honestly manage without her knowledge." "Are you ready for that conversation?" "No," Renata admitted, "but waiting won't make it easier. Waiting just makes the eventual conversation feel more like a betrayal than an honest disclosure." We agreed to call Sarah together the following week, both of us nervous about how she might receive news that inevitably felt strange regardless of how carefully we approached it. Sarah's initial reaction when we finally called her in Denver carried more shock than anger, though the anger arrived shortly after the initial surprise wore off. "Wait," Sarah said. Nobody spoke. "My mother and my ex-boyfriend? Are you serious right now? We wanted you to hear this directly from us, rather than through gossip or assumption," Renata said carefully. "How long has this been happening?" Sarah asked, her tone sharpening. "Nothing's actually happened yet," I clarified. "We're being honest about feelings that developed gradually, but we haven't acted on anything without telling you first." Sarah's silence stretched uncomfortably long after that clarification. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried complexity we hadn't fully anticipated. "I don't even know what to do with this information," Sarah said. "Part of me wants to be angry, And part of me is genuinely trying to process whether that anger is fair, given that you two clearly waited until you were being completely transparent with me. Take whatever time you need, Renata said. We're not asking for immediate acceptance. We just didn't want to build something in secret. I need to think, Sarah said. I'll call you both back. 8 days of genuine uncertainty followed, Renata and I maintaining careful distance while Sarah processed, neither of us wanting to push forward with anything more concrete until she'd worked through what she needed to work through. Sarah called back on the 8th day, her tone considerably calmer. I've been talking to my therapist about this, she said. About why it initially felt so wrong. What did you figure out? Renata asked carefully. A few things, Sarah said. The hardest part wasn't actually imagining you two together. It was this feeling that my own history with Nathan was somehow being rewritten, like our 4 years together suddenly had a different meaning because of what came after. That took me a while to separate out. Does separating it out help? I asked. It does, Sarah said, because the truth is, what Nathan and I had was real for what it was. It just ended. What's happening now is separate from that. It doesn't change what we were. A pause. I also realized you both were more honest with me than you needed to be. You could have built something secretly, and I never would have known until it was impossible to hide. The fact that you called me immediately, before anything even happened, that actually matters. Does that mean you're okay with this? I asked carefully. Getting there, Sarah said. I need us to establish some practical things, how family gatherings work, holidays, all of that. But I think I can actually get there. That's completely fair, Renata said. We're not trying to erase the complexity. We just want to build something honest within it. Renata's sister Carol provided the next test, visiting from out of state the following month after learning about the developing relationship. This seems remarkably unconventional, Carol said, during a tense dinner, even by our family's already layered standards. I understand the concern, Renata said, but I'm 54 years old, Carol. I've earned the right to build happiness on my own terms. And you, Carol said, turning to me. What exactly are your intentions here? Because if this is some strange rebound situation, it's not, I said firmly. I've examined my own motivations honestly. This isn't about proximity or convenience. I care about Renata specifically, not as some substitute for my relationship with Sarah. Carol studied me for a long moment before her posture gradually relaxed. That's actually the answer I was hoping to hear, she said. I just needed to ask directly. Over the following months, Renata and I built our relationship slowly and deliberately, both of us aware of the scrutiny surrounding our unusual connection and determined to demonstrate genuine substance rather than impulsive attraction. Keep waiting for this to feel wrong, Renata admitted, about 2 months into officially dating. Not because of how I feel about you, but because I've spent so long being told what appropriate relationships are supposed to look like. Does it feel wrong? I asked. No, she said, clear surprise crossing her expression. That's the strange part. It feels more right than almost anything I've chosen in years. Sarah visited for Thanksgiving that year, her first extended time with both Renata and me together as an actual couple, rather than simply processing news over the phone. The initial dinner carried visible tension, all three of us navigating unfamiliar territory. This is weird, Sarah admitted partway through dinner, breaking an uncomfortable silence. Want to be clear that I'm working on being okay with this, but it's still genuinely weird sometimes. We understand completely, I said. We're not expecting this to feel entirely normal immediately. Can I ask something? Sarah said, addressing her mother directly. Are you happy? Honestly, not just performing happiness to justify this unusual situation? Renata considered the question seriously. I am, she said. Happier than I've been in years. I know this created complications for you, and I'm honestly sorry for that discomfort, but I can't apologize for the happiness itself. Something in that exchange between them settled the room. Need to tell you both something, Sarah said, setting down her fork. I've actually started seeing someone new in Denver. Someone I met through work. That's wonderful, Renata said. Tell us about him. His name's Marcus, Sarah said. He's steady, kind, exactly the opposite of the dramatic relationships I used to pursue. Honestly, watching you two navigate this difficult situation with such directness made me realize I'd been avoiding exactly that kind of honest communication in my own relationships. That's a generous way to interpret our unconventional situation, I said, laughing slightly. I'm serious, Sarah said. I spent years watching my parents' marriage operate on unspoken tension and careful avoidance. Watching you two choose transparency, even when it was uncomfortable, actually taught me something valuable about what healthy relationships require. Settling into warmth after that, the dinner transforming into something considerably more real than any of us had planned. By the following spring, nearly a year after that initial hedge trimming afternoon, a new test arrived, one that would reveal how solid our foundation had actually become. Renata's decision to introduce me formally at her book club, a group of women she'd known for over 15 years, brought the next wave of scrutiny. They're going to have opinions, Renata warned beforehand. Some more diplomatically expressed than others. The book club dinner proceeded with careful, curious questioning from Renata's longtime friends, several clearly working through their own feelings about the situation's unusual nature. I'll be direct, one woman named Judith said, midway through dinner. This seems like it could easily become messy given the family connections involved. What happens if this doesn't work out? Considering the question seriously before answering together. We've discussed that extensively, Renata said. If this doesn't work out, we've committed to handling it with the same transparency we've maintained throughout. No hiding, no letting it damage my relationship with Sarah beyond what's already navigated. That's a mature approach, Judith said, though skepticism remained visible. Avoiding genuine happiness because of hypothetical future complications isn't actually protective, I added. It's fear disguised as caution. Several expressions at the table shifted visibly at that. I suppose that's fair, Judith admitted eventually. I just worry about Renata, given everything she's already survived. I appreciate that concern, Renata said, but I'm not the same woman who survived that marriage. This relationship exists because I chose it deliberately, not because I'm incapable of recognizing unhealthy patterns anymore. Renata's book club gradually warmed toward accepting our relationship, particularly once several members witnessed firsthand how we supported each other through ordinary life challenges rather than performing some temporary infatuation. Think we're finally past the scrutiny phase, Renata observed one evening, nearly 18 months into our relationship. People have stopped asking pointed questions and started just accepting us as we are. Took longer than I expected, I admitted. Unusual relationships always require more patience, Renata said. People need time to update their assumptions about what genuine love is allowed to look like. Carol, Renata's sister, came around quietly during those same months. No dramatic declaration, just a gradual warming visible in the way she started including me in family texts, then in the standing dinner invitation that appeared one October without fanfare. Sarah's relationship with Marcus had deepened significantly during that period, and she'd started visiting more frequently, our family gatherings gradually losing the tension that had characterized our earliest interactions. One particular visit, nearly 2 years after that first hedge trimming afternoon, revealed exactly how completely our unusual family had healed from its rocky beginning. Sarah brought Marcus home for the first time, introducing him to both Renata and me with visible pride rather than any lingering discomfort about our family configuration. "This is my mom, Renata," Sarah told Marcus, "and this is Nathan, her partner, who also happens to be my ex-boyfriend from years ago." Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly at that introduction, though he recovered quickly. "That's certainly a unique family structure," he said diplomatically. "We like to think of it as efficient," I said. "Everyone already knew each other before things got complicated." Marcus laughed, genuine amusement replacing his initial surprise. "Sarah mentioned this was unconventional, but I don't think I fully understood until seeing you all interact directly." Watching Sarah navigate introducing Marcus to our unusual family with such comfortable ease revealed exactly how far we'd traveled since that initial tense phone call nearly 2 years earlier. Watching that dinner, I realized I'd been quietly preparing for something significant, and it was time to stop preparing and simply decide. Discussing it with Sarah privately first felt essential, before making any decisions, wanting her honest input rather than simply informing her after the fact. "I'm thinking about asking your mother to marry me," I told her. "But I wanted your real reaction before moving forward with anything." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Are you asking permission or asking how I'd feel about it?" "Both, honestly," I admitted. "I don't need permission exactly, but I do need to know if this would genuinely affect what you and I have built." She was quiet again, longer this time. Can I be honest about what's still strange? She asked. Always, I said. Sometimes I catch myself doing the math, like you'll be my stepfather in some technical sense, and it still makes my brain do something weird, she said. I don't think it'll ever stop being slightly strange, honestly. She looked at me. But watching you with my mom for 2 years, you make her laugh the way she laughed before my dad got sick. I hadn't heard that laugh in almost 15 years. A beat. I think you should ask her. Starting to plan the proposal with something approaching real confidence. Choosing Renata's own garden, near the same hedges I'd trimmed during our very first meaningful interaction. Timing the moment for early evening when the summer light cast the same warm glow that had illuminated our original conversation. Standing in that garden, surrounded by those same perfectly maintained hedges, more nervous than months of careful preparation should have allowed. This feels significant, Renata observed, noticing my visible nervousness. What's going on? Do you remember what you said to me, right here, almost 2 years ago? I asked. Renata considered the question, searching her memory. I told you to stop calling me ma'am. Exactly, I said, smiling. You said you weren't that old to me. I don't think either of us understood yet how much that simple correction would end up meaning. Kneeling down, pulling out a ring I'd been carrying for exactly this moment. Renata Voss, I said, I don't want to call you ma'am, and I definitely don't want to simply call you my partner anymore either. Will you marry me? Renata's hands flew to her mouth, tears immediately filling her eyes. Yes, she said, barely above a whisper. Then, laughing through the tears, yes. We married that autumn in the same garden, hedges perfectly trimmed, Sarah standing beside her mother as maid of honor, Carol in the front row wearing the expression of someone who'd arrived skeptical and stayed for something real. Sometimes love grows in the exact spot you least expect it. If this moved you, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and subscribe, because next week's story starts in the last place anyone would think to look.